There are two kinds of people in this world. The people who fail to do what they know they should, and those who keep doing things they know they shouldn't. Guess what? You're both. Hi, I'm your host, life and business coach, Marcy Barker, aka your loving kick in the pants. In this podcast, I'll teach you the 6 steps of my accountability code that will help you wake up with clarity and show up with aligned action steps that make follow through easy and peaceful. All right, let's jump in.
Hello, my beautiful people. I just got off a fantastic coaching call and I was like, we just have to talk about this. And this is no outline, no script, no real topic other than the value of having people in your life for a long enough period of time that they can give an accurate observation of what's going on in your life and how you're moving forward. That is essentially how you could sum up everything that I'm going to talk about. So I got off a coaching call with a client who, her and I met years ago. I joined a Facebook group after I went to a conference, and it turns out I joined the wrong Facebook group, and this person posted she needed to do an interview with somebody for her YouTube channel, and I was like, we live so close, we can do it. So we met up, we did a video together, and that was like 7 years ago or something. Anyway, so throughout the years, we've done a lot of little things together, gone to the same events, talked to the same people. I joined a mastermind that she was in, and we've just grown alongside each other, and every once in a while our paths cross. And we had a really good conversation about her future, my future, the things that we're working on. And of course, we use the accountability code to make the conversation flow so that by the end of the call, we know exactly what commitment items you're working on. For those of you who don't know yet, this entire podcast, Your Loving Kick in the Pants, is based off my book and my process, the accountability code, so that you can become aligned so that follow through becomes easy and peaceful. And the steps of the accountability code are as follows: reflection, humility, planning, implementing, commitment, and feedback. And this process, ever since I developed it, has been amazing. It has changed my life because it helps me tune in to align my body and my spirit so that I'm very clear in what I should do. And when you're very clear in what you should do, the ability to follow through just becomes natural, and it becomes something that you're actually excited to do. You look forward to doing it. So the accountability code has been a really amazing thing. And in this coaching call, my client said, well, I really value having somebody in my life for long enough to give me a big picture or an accurate view of what I'm working on. And I just thought about that because a lot of times in business, we kind of chase who can help us next, or we chase the next solution, or we chase the next part of research that we're wanting to know about in business. But sometimes it would just be really good to go back to the sources that have been a constant in your life and say, let me match what I'm doing right now up against this constant and just see how I'm doing. And in my book, there is a story called Comparison is Not the Thief of Joy, and which is much different than you hear in social media. You hear all the time, don't compare yourself to others, you won't be happy. However, I'm like, if you compare yourself to the right people, then that gives you a good feeling inside that makes you want to emulate what that person has. And it's in a very honest and uplifting way, and not in a demeanor that's like out of jealousy or out of self-hatred or anything like that. And we need those constant sources in our life to say, hey, what am I doing right now? And how do you see this fits into what I want to do long term? And going forward in this conversation, I just am filled with gratitude to have people in my life that have known me for so long that they can give an accurate view. And in business, here's another tip or thing to consider is, in business, have you switched around so much that people are confused by what you do? Or are you doing something that is in line with who you are and what those constant things are in your life? And I had to learn this pretty recently as I transitioned from fitness to life and business, because I was real triggered by a post one day, and I doubt the person who made the post is listening to my podcast, but that would kind of be funny if it was. This person and she was in my group, she's in other networking groups, and there was just this piece about us that didn't really jive with each other. We could tell it's like, I don't really like what she's doing. I don't really like what she's doing either. And she made a post in another networking group that was like, doesn't it just give you such a bad feeling when people switch around? Like, first, here's the example that she used. When somebody is a yoga instructor and then they turn into a life coach and then they turn into a business coach, like, doesn't that just give you the ick? And I was irritated because I was like, she's obviously talking about me. And I've never taught yoga, but I've taught fitness classes for years and years. And in the 8 years I've been in business, I started out as a fitness instructor, and then I became a personal trainer, and then I went into nutrition, and then for a hot second, I didn't ever call myself a macro coach, but people called me that. And I was like, I align with that. I do macros for people. I know how to get the results you want with macros. And then stuff in my personal life prompted me to really focus on the mental health of stuff. So then it was like, oh, mindset coach. And I didn't really call myself a mindset coach, but I became more aligned with people who wanted to work on their mindset and less about people who wanted to lose weight. From there, as I continued to work on my business and I got the opportunity to be a part of a big production where it was a purpose to scale your business, I started learning more about myself and realized that I didn't want to scale a fitness business because that wasn't something that made me happy. I had already reached a state of growth where my programs hit almost every state in the country in the first year, and I had trainers that worked for me, and I liked to think I was doing pretty well. I still was in side hustle status, but I had learned a lot that made me very confident and an authority in what I was doing. So through that process of scaling a business, I was like, I don't want to scale fitness. I got to learn more about what I want. And through that process came my book, The Accountability Code. And that's when I officially made the jump that I did a retreat. My retreat last year, actually a whole year ago, is when my clients were like, you're not really our fitness coach. Like, you're our life coach and our business coach. And I said, you know what? That's exactly what I do. That's exactly what I am. And it took me a long time to come to terms with that change. And this post that I had read in social media just really triggered that. Because I don't want to see it as something that was bad. I didn't want to give into the narrative that me growing and me changing was something that needed to be put aside, and I had to do the same business for the rest of my life because that's what I decided upon. And so in this post, I was like, people should be allowed to adapt and grow and change. However, with deeper reflection, I took this through the accountability code, and the accountability code can be used for your goals or your problems. And this was a problem I had because it was creating resistance inside of me, and there was obviously negative feelings that I wanted to resolve. So the first step of the accountability code is reflection. So reflection is, okay, how am I feeling right now? And what's all of the different pieces that are making me so motivated to take care of this right now? So the part was, I'm triggered by somebody who really bothers me. I don't like what she's doing, but she's also going out of her way to post in a group to talk crap on people who change what they do in business. And reflection is just that, all of the different pieces and parts that come to your mind. You can spend hours or days on reflection, but for the purpose of this podcast and for how fast I like to work, I don't like to spend a lot of time doing it unless it needs it. So for reflection, that's it. The next step is humility. So humility is a modest view of who you are related to who you can be. And it's also tapping into the sources that are going to resolve any negative feelings. So in this moment where I'm pissed and triggered, I'm like, it's cool. Like, I'm a successful coach. She's a successful coach. This is not my Facebook group. So who am I to get mad at what she's posting? Like, whatever, she can post what she wants. And the other part of humility was the self-talk of, Marcy, you've been doing this for a long time and you've made it work. And people, of course, are going to judge you if they don't agree with it, but those are not your people. So tapping into humility is like, okay, it softens your heart a little bit and it opens up your mind. And that is 100% necessary when it comes to taking action that is aligned.
Hey listeners, the message of waking up and showing up is yours for the taking. In fact, it's free. I've recorded my entire audiobook and I'd love for you to consume it between episodes. Head to marcybarker.com to get instant access to the accountability code Wake Up and Show Up. All right, let's jump back in.
Let's move on to the next step, which is planning. So after you've gone through the process of understanding how you feel and allowing yourself to change based on good feelings, it's time to start saying, okay, well, what are you going to do now that you have these updated thoughts and feelings? And my plan initially was like, I'm going to write a post about how this is wrong, or I'm going to respond. And I actually did respond. I forgot about this. I did respond and I was like, it's unfortunate that you're judging everybody who does that. And she was like, well, I'm not judging people, but it looks like you're judging my post. And I was like, you said ick. You said that gives you such a bad feeling, people who do that. And I'm like, you're clearly judging people who do that. Like, you're not talking about a case by case. You're talking about everybody who does it. So it was probably after I responded that I really went through the accountability code, because I probably got more heated by commenting on her post. So there was a definite shift of where I was like, okay, time to take a step back. Then my plan was like, okay, well, I feel like I have to defend myself. And I didn't want to do that with this person because obviously it was going to be pointless from the interactions we had so far. But my plan was to figure out, if somebody has this perspective of ick or a bad feeling, how can I make sure that my transition is not perceived that way? And of course, we can't control everything in there, but I can make sure that there's clear proof and evidence that what I'm doing is legitimate and the very best way to go. And keep in mind, like, I hit 6 figures in my business and I was still triggered by this, which means there was something in me that didn't fully believe that it was legit. And that's what triggers do to us. They give us a reason to challenge our beliefs. So my plan was, I'm going to go and make sure that my own transformation is not perceived that way. So I don't want to give any indication that there is a problem. So the next step of the accountability code is implementing. It's good that you have a plan, but what are you actually going to do about it in this moment right now? And if you are familiar with the accountability code, or you remember, the next step after implementing is commitment, and there is a difference. So when I say, what are you going to do? Implementing is working on becoming that goal, not accomplishing that goal. So in order for me to implement, I had to figure out, well, what is it that makes my transformation legitimate? And it's accountability. When I started my business in September of 2015, the reason I did it is because I wanted to hold people accountable. If you don't know the story, I've probably shared it in one of the first episodes of this podcast, but I'll give you a quick summary. When I became a personal trainer, I only did it because I needed continuing education credits to keep my aerobics certification active. And so I became a personal trainer. I didn't really want to do it. I was used to entertaining a whole classroom full of people, and the thought of doing it one-on-one was just not appealing to me, but I did it anyway. And so after I became a personal trainer and I had clients, my husband said, you need to do this on the internet. You need to personal train people on the internet. And I thought, that is so stupid because you're taking the personal out of personal training. How are you supposed to personal train somebody when you're not there in person? And he was like, you got to do it. You know how to help people. And I think that you could really do this. And I was like, okay, I've worked with personal trainers in the past. And I said, one took my money for a challenge and then she ran. She never answered my questions. She disappeared. And I didn't like that. I worked with another personal trainer. She was amazing. She answered all my questions. She was there to help me, but she tried to turn me into a vegan. She tried to tell me that one day I had to stop eating cheese and dairy. And I was like, I don't want to do that. So I told my husband, if I'm going to pursue personal training on the internet, I have to be able to be there for people, and I have to hold them accountable, because it doesn't matter what you know, it matters what you actually do. So I continued to think about how my transformation could be perceived as legit. And I was like, light bulb, it's accountability. From day one, I have always held people accountable in my programs. And as soon as I got to the implementing part of the accountability code was when I was like, oh my gosh, this makes perfect sense. This is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to lean into accountability, because that is what I've always done. And that's what makes my entire transformation legit, not just in my own eyes, but in the eyes of people who have been following me for a long time, or even people who are new, just like this person who wrote the posts. Like, we were fairly new to each other, but we actually met up and had lunch together. And then, from there realized that maybe we just weren't each other's cup of tea. So implementing, I was like, accountability. That's what I have to work on. I have to make sure that I'm accountable, and I have to make sure that all of my messaging and what I'm producing on the internet is all about accountability. So it comes to commitment items. So what are you actually going to do? I told everybody. I told my clientele. I sent out an email. I posted in my Facebook groups. And the commitment I made was, I have to let people know that I don't do fitness anymore. Can I help you with mindset? Can I help you, give you food suggestions here and there? Yes, of course. However, I'm focusing on accountability. So if the accountability you need in your life is regarding food, sure, we can talk about that. But if it's regarding you and your relationship with yourself or your children or your husband or your business or whatever, like, that's what we're going to focus on. Going through the process of the accountability code and this beginning topic I told you about of having people in your life that can give you a good perspective because they've seen so much of you is really important. And the third part of this, I want to tell you, if you have struggled with growing in business or even in some of your same relationships, it could be because you're jumping around too much. You're not sticking to what one of my mentors has called as your North Star. My North Star is accountability. In your different business ventures or your different projects, have you stuck to the things that matter most, or do you feel like you're very unaligned in what you're doing? And as you listen to this podcast, I know it's a lot different than the other ones that I've done, and all of what I do has the goal of helping you be more accountable to what you really want. Accountability is your ability to follow through with desired expectations. And those expectations can be other people's, or if you want to be at peace, they will be the expectations that you accept for yourself. So going back to having people in your life for a long, long time, I encourage you to match what you're doing with what's been a constant in your life and just take it through the accountability code. See how things are changing for you, how they're adapting for you, and how they're coming together. And be willing and ready to accept those times where you're out of alignment and you have those feelings of like, geez, I am not doing that great. There's things I need to work on, or these things that this person has brought up has some validity that I need to address so that I can move forward with more confidence. So if you feel like you don't have people in your life to be a constant, I hope that you will accept the invitation for me to be one of those people, because I've been doing this for a long time. And it's been about accountability this entire time. So if you have sources in your life or resources that you can take advantage of that are constant, I hope that you'll see me as one of those people, because I'm more than happy to help you. And moving forward in your life and your business with alignment is a very good way to live your life. I know what it feels like to be scattered, because you guys want to know a secret? I didn't even want to start a business years ago. I did not even want to start a business years ago. And I've worked through all of that. My husband and I have had a million conversations about it. I absolutely love what I do now because it's more in line with what I actually want to do. Which brings me to the last step of the accountability code, which is feedback. Feedback is information used as a basis for improvement. And little did I know, I was constantly collecting feedback in my journey of growing and building a business. You guys, I could sum up my business like year by year, the biggest things that happened. And I learned a lot and I've made a lot of mistakes. And there's some years that I'm like, what? Why did I even work? Like, what did I even do that year? Because I put a lot of time into it and I'm not sure what it brought me. And if it weren't for the accountability code and me writing my book and me going through some really hard stuff, I wouldn't have known the things that I know now. And when I take the time to look back at the whole entire process, I realize that there were things that were constant, both good and bad things. But when we recognize those things, that's how we can utilize them to become better. I encourage you to find those constant things and to take it through the accountability code. As you do, you will not only find what you're good at, but you will also recognize the people and the resources that have been there with you the entire time. And I encourage you to reach out to those people, tell them thank you, ask them for their feedback, because chances are they're a reliable source that can help you move forward. And along with the accountability code, you will find more peace and clarity in what you're supposed to be doing. Ultimately, I want you to be happy. I know what it feels like to be building something where there's a constant state of resistance and it's not fun. However, I never knew how to get out of that until I took some big leaps of faith and invested in myself. And if you do that, you're going to propel yourself much faster than if you're just trying to figure it out on your own. So anyway, I hope this podcast was helpful because at the end of the day, I want you to be happy. And I'm going to tell you again, true happiness comes only when our spirits learn to control our bodies, training them to be governed by the laws of God. Ultimately, that's what I made the accountability code for, was for you to tune into the correct sources so that you can make the right choices so you can be happy. And when you're happy, the world is a better place. Like seriously, you work on yourself, it's going to impact your family, it's going to impact your friends, and it's going to impact your community. And that just makes a better and more safe world for us and our children. So anyway, accountability is super important, but obviously you know that because you're listening to the podcast. So I'm going to stop rambling. I'm going to tell you to have a fantastic day, and I'll see you next week.
Hey friends, I want to thank you for listening to this episode of Your Loving Kick in the Pants. If you got any value out of this episode, I would love for you to drop me a review or share with a friend what you learned. All right, I'll see you next Wednesday for Your Loving Kick in the Pants.